Everyone, so welcome back. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about why I've become an ordained minister. Before I get into that, I do want to thank my patrons on Patreon and everyone who comes to class, those of you on YouTube who like, subscribe, and comment. All of that contributes to spreading the word and hopefully helping more people. So thank you all. Okay, why have I become an ordained minister? Well, it's something that probably I should have done a long time ago. Some of you know the work that I do in depth. Others of you maybe not so much. You may only know me as a yoga teacher. But I wear many hats as a spiritual teacher. Yoga in this country is very interesting because it plays around with spirituality, but you can find yoga teachers who essentially consider themselves just simply, basically a fitness instructor. Somebody who helps you get a good sweat on, feel a little better, and that's it. If you are getting divorced, if your child is addicted to heroin, if you have a loved one who has a terminal disease, if you find out you have a terminal disease, these fitness instructor yoga teachers really have little for you in the way of spiritual guidance. And this isn't to put anybody down. This is just to draw a distinction, and this is, where we are with yoga in this country. Yoga basically claims to have this long spiritual heritage, and yet in this country we essentially treat it like it's part of the fitness industry. And as I pointed out, many yoga teachers actually, this is essentially how they identify. They don't want to talk with you about your divorce. They don't want to counsel you about your child who has a terminal illness. They don't have any tools for you. They basically can teach you how to stretch, how to breathe, all very important things, but that's essentially the extent of it. Do I consider that? Do I think that's how yoga should be? Is that somebody I think should be called a yoga teacher? No, I think those people can be called asana teachers. And so an asana teacher is someone who teaches you postures. But I also recognize that this distinction wasn't made in India, which is the home of yoga. So in India, you'll find people who are essentially fitness coach, for lack of a better way of putting it, and they call themselves yoga teachers. Now, an important distinction worth making is that, from what I understand about Indian culture, is almost everything is imbued with spirituality. So when you study music, there is a spirituality that brings into it. In fact, your music teachers, you would call your music teacher your guru. Same with medicine and health. An Ayurvedic doctor is a guru. So fitness, I think, is pretty much the same. You're going to enter into the spiritual at some point. Now, I don't know if you went to your music teacher in India with a spiritual crisis, would your music teacher be able to guide you? I honestly don't know. An interesting question. And again, modern times might be different than they were in the past. So maybe a true musical teacher brings in a spiritual element. This often happens even in the West, right? Where great musicians, they can actually sometimes seems a great deal of spiritual wisdom. So wouldn't really surprise me. Definitely in Ayurveda, though, which is medicine, it's definitely tied in with spirituality on some level or another. So fitness, even if we say, oh, yoga, you go to a yoga studio in India and there's a fitness person there, they're still going to be somewhat versed in spirituality and spiritual understanding, at least until recently. I think that's the case. So this sort of mixture of spirituality with the arts, with medicine, with fitness, we don't have that same recognition in our country. You go to your music teacher, you're not going to ask her spiritual advice. And if she starts giving you spiritual advice, you might very well fire her. Same with your physician, your doctor. If they start talking to you about spirituality, you might fire them. You're also not going to go to them when you're having a spiritual crisis, chances are. This is just how we do it in the West. I don't necessarily think this is a good thing, especially in terms of medicine. I think maybe doctors should be trained to be able to handle the spiritual aspect of their job, but no one asked me, so it's probably not going to happen. But what about yoga? What about yoga in this country? Well, it's interesting. I said earlier that probably I should have been ordained a long time ago. And the reason I say this is I've been doing the work of an ordained minister for quite a while now. Some of you are very aware of that, and others maybe not as much. But my father was very aware of this. So my father, some of you know, he passed away in 2000 due to coronavirus. But before he passed away, we actually spent quite a bit of time together in the, last 5 years or so of his life. We always stayed close, but we took a road trip. He came on various retreats of mine. We also went and would drive together to some of the teacher trainings that I would do. Sometimes he would actually participate. So it was a beautiful time in our lives together that we shared together before he passed away. And anyway, he came on some of my retreats and he saw the work I was doing. And he said, I'm really, he didn't say worried, but he was like, I'm really concerned for you because you are doing like the work of a minister or a preacher or a priest of clergy, but you don't have a church. It's just you. And he was right. He called it right. In this country, I don't think Yoga Alliance, just in general, I don't think we consider a yoga teacher somebody who is capable of counseling someone on spiritual matters. We don't necessarily expect it. It's funny because I think people do go there. I think students, very naturally, if you start to bring up spiritual matters in your yoga class, students very naturally start coming to you with those questions. But I remember one teacher coming back from a training with a very well-known yoga teacher, and she said on that training, people were asking him some really deep personal questions about their lives, about what I would call spiritual crisis. And he was giving them his opinion or advice. And she really didn't like that. She really felt like uncomfortable with that. And I get it. If you essentially think your job is fitness instructor or movement instructor, I get you to move and breathe a certain way, and then that's it. That is all that I really have for you, and that's enough. That's how some yogis approach it. Like, just do the practice, and I don't need to say anything. I don't need to teach you anything about yoga philosophy. I don't need to counsel you. I don't need to give you any advice. Just these postures, that's it. But this isn't how yoga is taught in India. It may have been taught that way to some Western students because of a language barrier, but generally, no self-respecting yoga teacher in India. Then again, it's changing. So you can go there today and be like, oh no, it's different. But in the past, no self-respecting yoga teacher is really going to teach you yoga without teaching you about some of the philosophy behind the tradition and the very rich spiritual tradition that gave birth to these practices. Generally, they would not be separated like that. So it's really only in modern yoga, and I'm talking specifically about what I know best, which is yoga in America, in the West in general, and then specifically in America. We pretty much divorced the spiritual from the practice. We can hint at it, we can maybe we might do a little bit of chanting, teacher might mention something about spirituality or use a little bit of philosophy in the class, but unless you enter into teacher training, you're generally not getting a lot of the philosophy or spiritual aspects of it. In addition to this, many yoga teachers are afraid to touch on certain sensitive subjects because of liability, and rightfully so. Unfortunately, we live in a very litigious culture where if people feel that you didn't do what they wanted you to do very often, if they feel that they've been wronged in some way, the recourse is very often through the legal system. Just people go there. So my father, what he was expressing when he went on these retreats with me is we were doing really deep work. We were doing very deep spiritual work. It's all spiritual. But what does the spiritual encompass? As I mentioned earlier, in India, it encompasses everything, you could say, right? And in Zen, in Japan, same thing. It touches every aspect of Japanese culture and life, from preparing food to swordmanship. Even war is influenced and imbibed with the Zen spirit and that philosophy. It's not even right to call it a philosophy. That insight informs the way even ancient Japanese did combat. So this again is perhaps a foreign idea to us in the West, where we very often separate things. So while this isn't a foreign idea where yoga came from, for us it might be a very foreign idea that a yoga teacher is supposed to also be a spiritual guide of sorts. So my father, when he came and saw what I was doing, he was concerned because he felt that if somebody got re-traumatized doing work with me, if we brought up some deep psychological issues for them, that then they might try coming after me legally. Additionally, when you're doing deep psychological work, there's a real danger of shadow and projection. People finding something inside themselves, but then projecting that onto you as the teacher or the person in charge. I wish I could say that something like projection was a rare thing, but unfortunately it happens more often than you might think, and it can be a real problem. Luckily for me, I've never been sued or had someone try and come after me in that way, but I suppose it is a risk with the type of work that I do. Now, up until the pandemic, I did a lot of work in groups. And so we would do very deep work, but we would do work as a group, generally speaking. And we mostly worked with the postures, with our breath, and with internal energy, by use of what are called locks and mudras, bandhas, mudras, pranayams. And this is basically Kundalini work, not Kundalini yoga, which is a brand of yoga, but really all yoga, at least when it's taught in a traditional way, is ultimately Kundalini yoga. So I'm not saying it's ultimately that style or that brand. That's a very specific thing. But it's like if I called my yoga enlightenment yoga. Does that mean my yoga is the only yoga that can lead to enlightenment? No. Or if I call my meditation enlightenment meditation. Does that mean that it's the only meditation that can lead to enlightenment? No. So Kundalini is the same way. It's just a name. It's a brand for a type of yoga. But ultimately, if yoga is understood and taught properly, it all awakens Kundalini sooner or later. So pre-pandemic, we did a lot of that work, and that's how we brought up a lot of that's how we dealt with a lot of the psychological aspect of it. I didn't do a lot of work one-on-one dealing with, again, sort of spiritual crises on a one-on-one basis. Fast forward to the pandemic, we couldn't do that group energetic work anymore. It wasn't safe to get together in a group and breathe heavily, right? That was just shut down. For a while, we couldn't even really get together in groups. And then wearing masks, certainly you don't want to do a lot of Kundalini work wearing a mask. It also was just a different energy in the air. Many students were reaching out to me one-on-one, and I started counseling many students one-on-one. I would do one-on-one sessions, personal sessions. I would also counsel couples. I would counsel whole families. And so this increasingly was something I was being called on to do. And this is a term that's used a lot in spirituality, right? You are called to do something. And that is essentially where I am with my life. Pretty much everything I do is something that I feel called to do. I don't pursue things from an ego energy anymore for the most part. I'm not fantasizing about creating XYZ and then pursuing that as an ego might. And nothing wrong with that if that's where you are. I'm not trying to vilify anybody. I'm just saying my experience is very, very different. So I get called and I move in that direction as I'm being called. And so this is just something that has happened, and it's happening more and more. I also became aware of certain things that maybe were not being addressed previously with the meditation, with the Kundalini work that we were doing, with the group sessions. Maybe something was still being missed. I can't say for sure, but certainly people who either were scared of doing that deeper energetic work with me, or people maybe who had not done enough of it, there was a feeling that something was being missed, that we needed another tool in order to really address everything. So I began to look for that tool, and I found it with my teacher, Scott Killaby, and the work that he was doing in his trauma centers with what is called inquiry, which I'll be talking more about in the future. I've already hinted at it and talked a little bit about in previous talks, but we'll be getting deeper into it. So Scott taught me how to facilitate a very specific kind of inquiry to help people with these psychological issues, these wounds that we carry around that cause us suffering even after we have woken up. Because many of you are spiritually awake already. Many of you are. You've been working with me a long time. I can tell just from conversations with you that there's a lot of clarity there. But what about the things that still cause us suffering? The things that we're still Velcroed, those thoughts that we still can't help but believe. What do we do about those? So that's where this work will help with that kind of thing. And I am doing this work now with people. So if this sounds like it can help you, then by all means reach out. But this is another reason I've gotten ordained. So the first one was I was already doing the work of a pastor or a minister. I was just doing it under the title of yoga teacher, which to me makes a lot of sense. As I said before, yoga teacher, at least in the culture that it came from, could be as much a spiritual guide as anybody. In fact, I would say a true yoga teacher would be expected to be that. But in this country, very different view. So unless a yoga teacher in this country or a meditation instructor is seen on the same standing as a pastor, as a pastoral counselor, then we have a problem, at least in terms of the legal system in this country, right? Or expectations in this country. So it just makes sense. And then as I begin doing inquiry with people and we begin working on, again, these very deep wounds that we might have, again, from a legal standpoint, I need the protection, I need the recognition that I am a spiritual teacher or healer, that I'm not a fitness instructor. Yes, I can help you with your fitness, I can help you with stretches, I can teach you yoga postures, I can teach you yoga breathing. All of this maybe falls under the realm of fitness. I know more and more fitness platforms are starting to include meditation as well. So this is starting to be seen as something that is just wellness, fitness, whatever you want to call it. Just these terms that, what does it really mean? But it's not spirituality, again. And we're not expecting to do deep psychological work with that. Again, if we have a spiritual crisis, if we have a life crisis, we're not expecting to go to our Peloton and have that resolved by finding something on Peloton. So this is where the divide is. And what I'm needing right now, where I am with my teaching, is I need to be put firmly in the spiritual camp. It needs to be recognized that that's what I do. I've been asked in the past, and I actually have officiated weddings before for students, so very often that's why people will get ordained, right? They'll go online and they'll pay $50 and they'll get ordained so they can marry their friends. But I did it actually really for the purpose of doing this spiritual work. So I'm now an ordained esoteric, interfaith, spiritual counselor or minister. And so this is a role that I plan to take on more and more in the coming weeks, months, and years. And I plan to continue to teach yoga as I have. But again, I'm feeling very much called to move in this direction, that this is really what many people need from me. And I have a unique skill set that's been recognized by some of you already. Some of you have been encouraging me to go in this direction for a while now. But also what's interesting is my teacher recognized it as well. The person who taught me how to lead this specific type of inquiry. So it's something that, again, I am cut out to do this work, and I think it's work that is very much needed. Do we need more yoga teachers? I don't know, maybe. Honestly, teaching yoga, again, if we raise the bar, if we make it spiritual, then I think we do need more yoga teachers. And I actually don't think there are that many real yoga teachers in that regard. If it's just going to be fitness, you know, maybe we need more. I think there are plenty out there, to be honest. It is not that hard to get certified to teach fitness yoga. And again, I'm not trying to disparage anybody, not trying to put anybody down. But what I consider yoga and what I would call a yoga teacher is more than just the fitness feel good. It does require the ability to sit with people in extremely uncomfortable situations and to ask the difficult questions and to be ready to be there, not necessarily with answers, but actually to be able to sit without the answers. That's maybe the hardest part, is to have people come to you in these situations and be okay not having an answer for them. It's not about the answer, in my opinion. Being comfortable sitting with the question, with the discomfort. So anyway, this is why I have become an ordained minister. I'm now Reverend Douglas Johnson. You don't have to refer to me that way, but you can if you want. And it is just making official what's already the case, basically. So I've already been doing the work of a spiritual counselor, spiritual minister. And like I said, what I need right now in terms of my career is I need that legal recognition and protection. So this is the first of some changes that I hope are coming. I'm also going to be rolling out the inquiry, which I encourage all of you to reach out to me and try a session. You really don't know until you try it whether or not it's going to be something that you can find useful or helpful for you. So I think just trying it out, doing it with me, it's a one-on-one session. We do it in Zoom. It takes 45 minutes to an hour usually. And it can be life-changing. Just knowing that this tool is available to you, that's the feedback I've gotten from some people already, that they're so happy that there's something like this available, and that I'm offering it. So yeah, this is kind of the beginning of that. And then as I take roots in that role more, there may be more changes coming. I'm really wanting to step into the role again that I feel I'm being asked to fill. And it's more of a leadership role, less of a fitness instructor role. So I definitely still would like to teach classes, but maybe be a little more selective about when and where I teach. And I'd like to start doing deeper work. So more workshops and trainings and more one-on-one counseling work, things of that nature. So anyway, I hope that clears things up. This is the role that I see yoga teachers filling. It's a unique role in this day and time. And again, I don't think that every yoga teacher fills this role. I don't think they want to, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Somebody just wants to teach fitness. They fell in love with the yoga postures and yoga class, and they just want to share that. There's nothing wrong with that. But at least the tradition holds out the possibility of a yoga teacher like me, who is a spiritual counselor, who is willing to sit with you in your most uncomfortable moments and help you with that. I've helped students go through the death process. I've helped students with, again, family crisis, with marital crisis, with problems with their children, all kinds of problems. And these are things that I'm comfortable and happy to help with. And so, again, I know that not every yoga teacher, as we are defining it right now, is comfortable with that, and that's perfectly fine. But I would love to train others who are interested in doing the work that I do someday. And I think this is maybe the first step, in the first real step in that direction. Beginning to create a vision of a yoga teacher that is capable of doing more and has in her tool belt many tools through which to help her students, not just postures, not just some breathing, not just a little bit of wisdom that's taken from the Yoga Sutras or the Bhagavad Gita, but a much deeper well, and a study that goes on that isn't a 200-hour training. Many of you know I have over 1,000 hours of training, and that's what's recognized. But I'm nonstop training, learning. My work with Scott was I don't know how many hours, and it continues. So again, this isn't something you can do overnight, becoming a spiritual teacher like that. But even from my first yoga class, I think there was an element there. There was the seeds of what I'm doing now were present. And even when I started teaching meditation, I think those seeds were there. So there are others out there like me, and I would love to help them someday and guide them and help share what I've learned so that they don't have to go through such a sort of scattershot approach. Anyway, everyone, thank you for listening. I hope this was enlightening or interesting. It is a little personal bit about my story, but hopefully you'll see the changes coming out here and the type of material that I begin to educate about. And I'm excited about working with Scott. He wants to work closely with me. He wants me to help in his community, and maybe there can be some overlapping collaboration there. I don't know. But certainly I'll be sharing with all of you what I've learned. And again, if you would like to do some inquiry with me, definitely reach out, because it's a very powerful tool for especially someone post-awakening. If you're still suffering post-awakening, then this is the tool. It's what I would call spiritual surgery. So thank you all, and I hope you enjoyed the talk. I'm going to continue with my walk here, and until next time, namaste. Have a beautiful day.